Tell me how much you love me.
How much?
That much?
This much.
When a group of 20-somethings find themselves in the middle of a seemingly podunk Texas town, they're greeted with nothing but trouble, chaos, and death, much of it in the form of the massive chainsaw-wielding cannibal known as Leatherface. I'm Cinematico Magnifico of amallcrackpot.com, and welcome to the Nightly Chill. Tonight, we're taking a look at Marcus Nispel's 2003 remake of the original 1974 slasher phenomenon, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Unlike his later work with the Friday the 13th remake, Nispel sticks far closer to Tobe Hooper's original, arguably too close for its own good. Aside from a few surface changes, the basic plot and beats from 1974 are carried over to what is effectively a less gritty movie. Whereas Hooper's original looked and sounded brutal and far too realistic, Nispel instead crafts something that is far too slick and clean. Nispel's vision, still set in the 1970s, is woefully trapped in the early 2000s and reeks of Hollywood. The visuals quite literally darker and inexplicably sepia-toned, and unlike what was released in theaters in 1974, this one shoehorns in typically beautiful starlets, in-your-face drug use and references, in a perpetually bleak, serious tone. In addition, the original cast of characters were a variety of personality types with distinct character traits. Meanwhile, this one largely consists of interchangeable, forgettable faces, and yes, that includes Jessica Biel. None of the characters really like each other, the actors have no chemistry, and the entire group just comes across as cannon fodder. Despite some brutally violent, if entirely rehashed scenes and kills, at no point does Nispel really succeed at making you care for any of these characters. Furthermore, the alterations to scenes and sequences frequently cause the movie to drag at points where the original instead sees the tension rise. For example, the opening sequence sees our characters picking up a traumatized young woman rather than a crazed hitchhiker who ultimately attacks them with a knife. Prior to picking up the man in the original, the movie is fairly upbeat and filled with somewhat realistic chatter between a group of friends. Thus, when the man appears, it injects a large dose of tension and chaos that drives the movie forward at high speeds. Meanwhile, Nispel's version of this consists of dull witticisms and bickering between bland, low-energy characters. The energy in this sequence is dragged down further by the increasingly bleak appearance and fate of the young woman. Worse, what happens with the young woman, while visually shocking, does absolutely nothing to drive the story forward. It does provide a bit of mystery for those who aren't familiar with the original, but it isn't a particularly interesting one. Instead, you'll be asking yourself why these characters, like so many others in bad horror movies, constantly and purposely place themselves in increasingly dangerous and stupid situations. All this said, the 2003 version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't an outright bad movie, nor is it unwatchable, but it is easily the inferior version of a horror classic. A classic with numerous faults of its own, sure, but one that continues to age far better than one nearly 30 years newer. You can follow Amoral Crackpot on Facebook and Twitter, and also be sure to leave any questions, comments, and suggestions for future reviews in the comments section below, and maybe discuss today's movie at greater length. Join us again tomorrow night when our final movie of the week will be the 2015 reimagining of Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg's 1982 classic, Poltergeist. But until then, I'm gonna make like a tree and get out of here.